I think most of you should have the sheet. The sheet is really, it's not for you to take notes on. I mean, you could take some notes on it. Everyone by now should have their own notebook. But the sheet is more of like a take-home. It's something where you can take it home if you want to review some of the things we're going to talk about tonight. So everyone should have one of those. Is there still that stack floating around? Okay, yeah. And it'll work its way to you eventually. And the only other thing I'm going to send around, really simple, is just put your name and signature. Just name is fine, really. I can start with you and then pass it around. Whoever's last, bring it up. Okay, I'm going to introduce the theme. So this is class number 6, like I said, and this is all about preparing for the spiritual battle that awaits us. Because until the moment of confirmation, everyone who is a baptized Christian is considered a child in the eyes of the church. It's confirmation that makes you an adult in the eyes of the church. So this is a pretty big deal, the sacrament. And it's what makes you ready to be a soldier for Christ. So I know I keep coming back to that. I think Michael does too. Because as you guys know, we're in the middle of a battle. The war is going on. Why do wars happen? Because people are selfish, right? They don't think about others. Every bit of suffering that we encounter, a lot of it's because people are just mean to each other, but all that comes down to, why we're in the class. We're in the class to fight the good fight and to be on the side of goodness. And that's why it's great that you guys are here. Okay, so, topic for today. It sounds like a pretty heavy topic, the 7 deadly sins. And this has been written about even since medieval times. So this is from Dante's Purgatorio, and I'm sure you're familiar with Dante. Well, he had the Divine Comedy where he talks about heaven and hell, and he also talks about purgatory. And in purgatory, there are 7 levels, according to the 7 main areas of sin that we have, because people need to be purified. So I want to make sure that we understand this is not going to be, tonight is not about guilt and shame, and it's not even about everything's bad and everything is a sin. It's not it at all. Tonight is actually very positive because, as I say in the subtitle, we are going to talk about how to fight these deadly sins with virtues. How many have ever heard of the 7 deadly sins before? Okay, I think there's an anime series about this now, and there have been movies made about it, right? So it's something you've probably heard of. But what I want you to understand about them is these are the 7 main areas where people mess up. Okay, sometimes it helps us to know what the areas are where people mess up so we can avoid those things. It's like if you ever wanted to eat a healthy diet, right? If you go to a nutritionist, they're going to say, well, you know what the sins are? High fructose corn syrup, processed sugar foods, and soda, never. So what you have to do is you got to know what things to avoid are, and then you also need to know what the healthy things are. Okay, same thing with this. In order to be good Christians, we need to know what the dangers are so that we can look inside ourselves and identify the areas where we need to work. Okay? So that's the very positive reason why we're talking about this tonight. And it's going to be a pretty, it's going to be a mellower class in some ways than earlier ones, because there won't be a ton of things that you'll write down. This class won't be as notes intensive as some of the other ones, but we all need to be thinking and examining ourselves as we go through tonight's lesson, okay? And I'll be asking some of you to share your thoughts, maybe things you've experienced, because we can all grow from each other. All right, so let's launch into the 7 deadly sins, and for each one I'm going to talk about the sin, and then I'm going to talk about the key virtue that is the opposite of that sin. So for every one of these bad things we're about to learn, there is a good thing that counteracts it. Kind of like for every sickness there's a medicine, same thing here. So we're going to learn about the medicines just as much as we're learning about the sicknesses. And it's all because we want to be good soldiers for Christ, okay? All right, so first one. The first one is one that we're all familiar with, and that is pride. And there's a reason why pride is going to be first on the list. Because pride is the original sin. It's what our first parents did. Yeah, they distrusted and then they disobeyed, but all of that was because of pride. So this is the first one of the deadly sins, and we're probably going to see this is the one that's most dangerous. So first, let's define it. Every time we come to a new one of these dangers or poisons, we're going to define it. Okay, so pride. This is not a definition, it's just kind of framing it. And we're going to talk about why it's so bad. It's bad for these two reasons, okay? What do I mean, God shuts out God? Pride is what closes us to the relationship. It's like if you're talking with someone and you just hang up the phone. When you hang up the phone, you are not closing the relationship, but you're shutting the person out. Okay? When we are proud, what we're doing is we're telling God that we're not interested in him. We're telling God that we would rather live without him. Okay, and the other reason I say that it denies our identity as creatures is because we as creatures are the ones that God made to love and serve him. So we can't change the fact that we're creatures. We can never become God. It's impossible to become God. Why? Because God had no beginning. We had a beginning. We can't go back and become something that doesn't have a beginning. It makes no sense. Which means you just need to accept the fact that you're not God and you never can be. But you're never supposed to be. The whole beauty of our existence is that God made us to love him because that's the best thing he could have made us for. He could have made us for many other things, but he made us for the best possible thing for us, which is to love the infinitely lovable one and to be happy in him. Okay, so pride is so bad because pride is, think of it, it's a lie. Pride is the lie where you simply don't accept the fact that you belong to God. Now, we are free and we can choose to reject that. That's what Satan and the evil ones did. Chose not to serve. But see, that's why pride is a dangerous thing, because we're all capable. Every single one in this room, no matter how good we think we are, we're all capable of turning our backs on God. Every single one. And that's why we need to fight. Okay, so definition time. According to St. Thomas, pride takes 4 forms, and each one of these 4 is what you could say a definition of a kind of pride. Okay, so the first one, attributing to ourselves perfections we do not really have. So that's where, that's kind of the tamest version of pride. That's probably like what you experienced when you were in elementary school and the kid who says, oh yeah, I'm the strongest person in my whole neighborhood. Or another kid who says, oh yeah, I'm the smartest person of all time. Some crazy thing that kids make up, But that's a version of pride. We can even do that when we think we've got certain qualities we don't, or we maybe like to think that we're better at stuff than we really are. That's really rooted in pride. It's when it comes, it's like all about me, right? That's pride, when it's all about you. Second form, possessing such perfections, like maybe you do have good qualities, right? Maybe you're smart, strong, beautiful, whatever it is, qualities that God gives us, but thinking we have them because we worked very hard. This, folks, is the most common form of pride. And if we're honest with ourselves, we could probably all point out times in our lives where we've fallen into it because it's so easy to fall into it. It's basically where you pat yourself in the back and you think, hey, yeah, I really nailed that. I really did that well. And I'm great at this and stuff. But you're not giving any credit to God. You're using those accomplishments or those qualities, and you're making yourself feel good about them and not giving all the credit to God. Okay, so it's a really common form of pride. Very common form. Okay, third form. Possessing perfections and knowing God gave them to us, but thinking he did so because we deserve them. Yes, I have success and well-being in my life because I'm a good person, I deserve it. Or yes, I have a wonderful family or a wonderful wife, whatever, because I deserve it. See, that I deserve it, that's where pride comes in. Because we don't deserve diddly. But God gives us stuff not because we deserve it, but because he loves us. You give your child a Christmas present, it's not because your child cleaned up the house, cooks the food, earns the money. Your kid doesn't do anything, but you love your kid. See, that's the thing. That's us. We are God's kids. We don't do anything that he can't do for himself. We don't deserve anything, but he gives us so much because he loves us. See, that's the real deal. That's truth. Pride is the lie. The lie that says we do deserve stuff. All right, and the fourth form is this. Possessing perfections, all these things you're good at, whatever, knowing God gave them to us, but then refusing to share those with other people. Here's a good analogy would be, let's say there's a father, and I don't know, he's really good at a skill. Maybe he's really good at karate, or he's a really good cook. And he doesn't actually teach his son the skill because he thinks maybe his son might get better at it than him, or maybe he just wants to have it all for himself. This is a less common form of pride. It's less common, but it can still happen. It can still happen. Take home lesson. Watch out for number two. Watch out for number two, because number two can really sneak up on all of us and bite us. Number two is a dangerous one, okay? But basically, pride is where you deny that you belong to God. You want to be your own man, your own woman. You want to be independent of God and control things. And all of us have this. All of us have it inside ourselves. Got to fight against it, but we all have it. Okay, so it's good to be aware of the things that we have so that we don't get surprised by those things. Okay, now, talking about the sin is the negative part of tonight, but there's also the positive part. Because for every one of the poisons I'm going to describe tonight, we've also got the medicines. And so the medicines are the virtues that go, they counteract the poison. So what do we do if we want to be less proud? Humility and confidence in God. That's really where it's at. You think to yourself, all right, yeah, I can see some pride in my life. What do I do? Do I just avoid the pride? Well, actually, it's better to work on the opposite virtue. And by doing that, you're going to basically get rid of the pride as you go. Okay? You want to eat a healthy diet? All right. Well, don't just think about cutting out high fructose corn syrup and all those poison foods. Think about eating the good stuff, and then you won't have time to eat the bad stuff. Same kind of thing. It's the same kind of logic here, okay? Humility and confidence in God. What comes to you guys' minds when you just hear the word humility? I mean, you know what humility means, but how would you put it in your own words? Anyone help me with that? Admitting you're wrong is part of humility. That's good. What's another part of humility? Well, yeah, but what does that mean? Right? We're trying to understand what does it mean. Being humble is definitely the opposite of pride. Giving God credit instead of giving yourself the credit, right? Admitting you're wrong when you're wrong. What's another big one when you mess up in a human relationship? I'm sorry. You know why sometimes people just don't apologize? Because they're too proud to admit they're wrong. And sometimes the best thing you can do in a wounded relationship is be the first to say sorry. Just be the first to say sorry. See, all that's humility, folks. There are different things we can do in our lives to work on humility. And when we work on humility, we are automatically getting rid of pride. It kind of happens at the same time. What's some other ways to be humble? So we got admitting you're wrong, asking for forgiveness, giving God the credit instead of yourself. What are some other things that come to mind? Ways to be humble. Sharing is a good one. Taking accountability, right? Where you take responsibility for something. Let's say that something happens at work. And thank you for mentioning that. I have this great story that happened one time. So I've had a lot of different jobs in my life, and one time for about a year, I was a pantry man in a store. So I used to work in the walk-in fridge, and the pantry and all kinds of food deliveries and stuff. And one time, a whole box of pasta sauce fell. It was all this red on the floor. It was my fault. Okay, so I go clean it up, and when I come back, the boss is chewing out my colleague for messing up. But you know what my colleague did? He just took it all. He just took it all. Now, it was my place to be humble and say, no, it wasn't him, it was me. But my friend, I could tell, was trying to do me a favor by taking the heat himself, and so I let him. But then I thanked him. I said, hey man, what you did was awesome. Because he was humble. You see, humble is when you're taking accountability for stuff. Right? What's one more way we can be humble? Just with your family, workplace, anything come to mind? All right, maybe it doesn't come to mind now, but I think we all know what we mean by humility, right? It's when it's not all about you, and you're about giving credit to other people or to God, and depending on others. Oh, that's another one. Asking for help. Admitting you're wrong. Asking forgiveness, right? Giving credit to God. Asking for help. That's a big one, because you know what we like to do? Especially men, I think. We got it. I got this. I can handle it. You need help? No, I'm good, right? It's more humble to say, yeah, I could use some help. You see how that's more humble? So the point is, these little things that we do in our lives to try to be more humble, that's how we're getting rid of the pride poison. Does that make sense? Okay, now the other antidote is confidence in God, because you see, pride is where you trust in you. I got this because I've got the talent and I've got the skills. See, confidence in God is where you trust in God's ability to help you. And you're not relying on yourself, you're relying on God. See, there's a big difference. Two people can be confident. Right? We've all met confident people, seem confident, they're sure about themselves. But one person could be proud confident, all cocky because he thinks he's all that. Right? And the other person is humble confident, because that person puts all of his or her trust in God. Does that make sense? So being confident in God and trying to depend on God. Like when you go to a job interview or you start your day, Lord, help me. I don't have this on my own. I need your help. These little acts of humility where we express our confidence in God. Okay, next, poison. The next poison. And it's a big one because it's such a nasty one. Envy. Envy. We sometimes call it jealousy. But when you define envy, it's almost embarrassing that you could have these feelings, but we all get it. Insufficiently grateful for what you have. You know, a lot of us in this country, we live like kings. And what I mean is most of us aren't worried about where the next meal is coming from. Most of us have a roof on our heads. And I'm not saying that we're all rich and all that. That's not my point. My point is that if we compare our standard of living to what goes down in a lot of third world countries, we are so spoiled. And yet, you know what we can do? We can just get used to it. And then envy, I don't know, rich neighbor down the street has got the big house. Why look at the big house and the big car when you've got so many things? You just got to be grateful for those. Okay, so the point is, envy is partly that. It's partly wanting what someone else has, even though you've already got plenty of stuff to thank God for, but you want what someone else has. Being sad because another has got it. See, this is kind of embarrassing, but it's what we are, right? We are wounded people, and we are capable of being sad when someone else gets a good thing. I felt that way a couple of times in my life. I mean, if we're all honest. Or the opposite. Actually, I saved the worst for last. If being sad when someone else succeeds is bad, being happy when someone else goes down is the worst of the worst. Being happy to see someone go down. And yet, you know what, folks? We're all capable of it. We're all capable of it if we're honest with ourselves. It doesn't mean we're bad, terrible people. No, I'm not saying that. It just means that we need to be aware of what the dangers are. Okay, do you know what I'm saying? And if we're aware of what the dangers are, then we can avoid those things and live more positively. All right, antidote. Two for this one too. Gratitude and kindness. If you guys work on gratitude and kindness, envy then kind of fades away. Envy fades away. So first gratitude. Why do you guys think gratitude, based on what we talked about so far, why do you think gratitude could be an antidote to envy? How do you think that works?
Thankful for what you have.
And therefore, if you're thankful for what you have,
it doesn't really matter what anybody else has.
Exactly. If you're thankful for what you have, it doesn't matter what they have. And that's a beautiful quality, right? If you're thankful for what you have, you can even be happy at what other people have. Why? Because you're content with what you've got. See, gratitude is a really important virtue, and yet there are a lot of people who maybe drift away from it. And I think the reason they drift away from it is we all get used to stuff. I mean, personally, I'm used to having 3 meals a day. I'm used to it. I should appreciate it more. Every time I do a meal, I should be, Lord, thank you that I have this food. Thank you that I'm not starving like some people. Thank you. And, I try to do that sometimes. The fact is, I'm used to it. You see, we're all kind of used to things because we have them every day. 2 legs, I can walk. 2 arms, I can carry stuff. We've got so much stuff to be thankful for. We can hear, we can see. I think if we spent some time every day just thanking God, even if it's only 2 minutes, where all you do during those 2 minutes is just thank you, God, for the food, and thank you, God, for the good weather today. Thank you, God, that I have a car and a house. Thanks, God, for my kids, for my wife. Long list. And we could go on probably more than 2 minutes. Then it makes us realize how much we have. And then we're less likely to be jealous of others. Okay. Other antidote is just kindness. If you're kind to people, then you're less likely to focus on what they have, and you're more likely to focus on who they are. See, when you're kind to people, you're kind not because of what you can get from them or what qualities they might have. You're kind just because it's the right thing to do. Be kind to another person. So kindness then makes you forget about all that secondary stuff and focus more on the person's heart, on what that person's worth is as just a person. I often think about, my own kids, and I think, why do I love this kid and think he's so cute? And he doesn't do anything. I mean, when he cleans badly. He's always, who I'm talking about. Frank and I know each other, and he knows who I'm talking about. It's my youngest son. But then I think, I love him because he's him. See, when we're kind to people, we're kind because it's just a person, not because of any other reason. Okay, so the point is, we want to get rid of jealousy. Gratitude and kindness go a long way. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. All right. Next major poison is anger. Anger. Anger is unrestrained resentment or hatred towards another. It often seeks revenge. We probably have moments of road rage. Does anyone, when they're driving, have moments of road rage? Okay. It happens, right? Someone cuts you off, someone does something bad, or they almost crash into you, all this, it's natural. But you see, that's just a knee-jerk reaction. That's not the kind of deadly sin we're talking about here. The deadly sin we're talking about here is where you nurture a grudge. Someone you don't like or someone's hurt you, it's so easy. Hold the grudge, be angry, have those hateful feelings, and want to get even. That's natural. We've all been there. We're all human beings. This is the kind of anger we got to watch out for. Okay? Because we can all fall into it. How many here have ever been seriously hurt by someone else? Okay. Seriously hurt by someone else. Well, when you're seriously hurt by someone else, that's the natural thing, is anger, resentment. God doesn't blame you for having those feelings. But see, the choice is where you choose to hang on to those feelings or not, or you choose to think a lot about those feelings or not. And we can all make that choice. We can all make that choice. Pray for that person who hurt you. You don't have to think lovely thoughts about them, no. But try not to think all those hateful thoughts. Okay, this is what we mean by anger. Not road rage, but a deeper kind of anger. All right, antidote. Contrary virtue is patience. Patience, patience. I'm going to read you guys. I'm going to read something from the Bible. And as I read it, I think you're all going to recognize it. You've probably heard it before. But just listen to the whole thing and you'll see why. All right, so this is St. Paul talking about what true love is, where he's talking about charity, right? True love, not the feelings type of love, but the real love that we're commanded to show to our neighbor. He says, love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way, it's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. By the way, I'm reading from 1 Corinthians 13. It's one of the best parts of the Bible, so I recommend writing it down. 1 Corinthians 13, the entire chapter is about love, and I'm reading you part of that. 1 Corinthians 13. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. All right, I want you to look at the beginning and the end of what I just read you. So I'm going to repeat it one more time. It's a short paragraph. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way, it is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. You guys see how the beginning and the end are about patience? He says love is patient, that's how he starts. And then the last thing he says is love endures all things. Endurance is patience. Putting up with stuff is patience. We all know how hard that is. I sometimes get mad when I hear people say, oh yeah, patience is not one of my virtues. Patience doesn't come naturally to anybody. You got to work on it. See, that's the point. That's why we're soldiers for Christ. It doesn't just come easy. But see, if you work on patience, it's going to help you to have less anger. If you work on putting up with people who bother you, maybe the little things they do that annoy you. You're patient, well then you're going to be less angry. You see how they're opposites? Angry is where you snap and you act out. Patience is the opposite. Patience is, all right, just going to take it, I'm just going to endure it, put up with this person who annoys me. And as we work on more patience, we're actually becoming more loving people. Since patience is how St. Paul defined love. Okay, so patience isn't just any virtue, it's one of the biggest virtues. One of the greatest ways we can show love. Okay, next poison. Sloth. Sloth. Has anyone ever seen a sloth in real life, or at least a recording of a sloth? You know how they move, right? Very slow. Very slow, because they're lazy creatures. All right, so as you can imagine, sloth is laziness. But there's a little more to it than that. All right. We in this country are generally not lazy people. Why? Because there's a strong work ethic in America. There just is. It's one of the things that makes our country great. And we all grew up surrounded by that, right? So most of us are not lazy people. We all have jobs, or we're trying to get jobs, whatever it is. We're not just sitting around all day. But here's the thing. Laziness can come into work in two main ways, right? One is working in a disorganized fashion, where you kind of just, all right, I'll do this, and then do that. You don't really have a plan. You don't say, well, first I'll do this, kind of write things down, sit down 3 minutes, right? Just working without a plan, without a goal, is disorganized work. Why do people work that way? Because it's easier to work that way than it is to work with discipline and organization and goal setting. Okay, the other way, and this is common, especially today with smartphones and stuff, is what I call easy busy work. So classic easy busy work is, oh, I've got 5 minutes free, check my email. 30 minutes later, check my email. Checking your email is one of the biggest wastes of time. Why? You don't need to check it 60 times a day. You don't need to even have email alerts. Just, check it twice, maybe 3 times, but good 10, 15 minutes, whatever. But the reason people check their email so often is because it's an easy, busy work thing to do. But see, my point is, guys, that's still sloth. And not saying that you're going to be condemned for it. It's not the point of this talk. It's just that it's one of those things we need to watch out for, because all of us can fall into it. All of us can fall into just doing without really set goals. And then what are we doing? We're just spinning our wheels, and we're not really heading to one specific place or getting important things done. Any type of busy work type of activity that keeps your hands occupied, but without really having a schedule and a goal, falls into this category. Okay. So we're all capable of sloths. Every single one of these 7 poisons I'm talking about, I've done them all. We've all done them all. And all of us at this very moment have all 7 inside us right now. We just do. It's who we are. See, God doesn't love us because we're holy. And God doesn't love us because we don't have these 7 things. God loves us even though we do have the 7 things. Because God just loves us for who we are. Not what we do, how we look, what we've accomplished. None of that. He just loves us. You got the 7 sins, deal with it. So do I. But this is the beauty of Christianity, is that our God loves us. And we can try to apply the antidotes. Okay, so antidote for sloth is diligence. Coming up with a plan, maybe writing it down, schedule. All right, I got to work on my project. My project is due 2 weeks from now. Okay, so on this day I'll have this much done. Next day I'll have this much done. It's taking some time, making a plan. All right, I got my New Year's resolution was to lose weight. Okay, let's make some plans. My New Year's resolution was to pray more. Okay, what's your plan? Working with a plan is part of diligence. See, that's not spinning your wheels. That's putting the car in drive and going someplace. And there's a big difference. Okay, so diligence then is going to help us to get rid of sloth. Now, in this country, there is a danger, though. And if we focus too much on diligence, what's the other opposite that we can fall into? Begins with a W. And it sounds like another addiction. Workaholic. We can become a workaholic. And that can be a danger in this country because this is a hard-working place. People work. So if we focus too much on diligence, yeah, we're going to get rid of sloth. But then we might fall into the other thing where we just work ourselves to the bone and never have time to rest or even shut out relationships. Okay, so you guys all understand there's got to be a balance, right? It's like in anything, a balance. Okay, but that is what we should have, is a healthy diligence. Next poison, the 5th of 7, is greed. Greed is wanting more and more material goods or worldly success instead of being grateful for what one already has. This is a big one, and it's sneaky because it can sneak up on you when you're doing everything right. All right, you practice your diligence, you got rid of sloth, and you conquered your pride, and you're not into envy. But because of your diligence, you're achieving more, you're getting more success, maybe you're getting more riches, and then the spiral can begin. I got to work more to get more. And that's not enough, so I got to get more. And that's not enough, so I need more. It's like those drug addicts who, right, the more dependent they get, the bigger hit they need. And that gives them a high, but then the next high, they need a bigger hit. And it's this vicious cycle. Greed's a vicious cycle that we can all fall into. It's not just money. Could be success. Maybe you like how you do a good job at work and people speak well of you. Great. Well, then maybe you're going to become the workaholic because that's going to give you more of this thing that you crave. So the point is that instead of being grateful for what we already have, we just keep wanting more. Has anyone ever gone, I'm sure everyone has, but has anyone gone recently to a buffet restaurant? All right, has anyone ever gone to a buffet restaurant where it's all you can eat? Okay. Okay, all right. One thing that can happen to you at a buffet restaurant, especially because you want to get your money's worth, right? is you go load the plate, eat it. You go load the plate, eat it. And you're basically, while you're eating it, thinking about loading it again. And this is kind of a silly example, but see, this is what greed is. Greed is where instead of enjoying what's on your plate, you're just thinking about what you're going to put on the next plate. Okay? And so we can apply that now to worldly success or money or security, all these things that are good. The point isn't that they're bad, it's just that we can want them too much and keep wanting more, keep wanting more. It's like imagine a spoiled kid. Right? Just imagine a spoiled kid. This is probably not your own kids, but imagine some spoiled kid who lives in a mansion, right? And Christmas Day under the tree, 10 presents for spoiled junior kid, right? So opens 10 presents, and after the 10 presents, instead of going up to mom and dad, giving them a big hug, saying thanks, his question is that it? Doesn't that just disgust you? It does, right? It disgusts us even to think that someone could be like that. That's greed. And we're all capable of becoming just like that spoiled, rotten kid who receives the 10 gifts, and the only question is, what's next? All right, antidote. Gratitude and generosity. Remember, gratitude was also an antidote to envy. But notice how gratitude can be an antidote to greed. How do you guys think that works? How can gratitude be an antidote to greed? What do you guys think? Being thankful, but what does that help you do? Exactly. If you're thankful for what you have, you won't keep wanting more. So you're at the buffet restaurant, you're on your second plate, and you say, well, I'm pretty full. I'm just going to enjoy my second plate and not even think about the next. Same type of deal, right? Gratitude for what you have, the money that you do have, the success that you do have. Be grateful for that instead of endless drive to get more. And generosity. Generosity is where, instead of keeping that good stuff for yourself, you think about giving it to others. You think about giving it to others. Has anyone ever had the experience where you give something to somebody just because it's the right thing to do, and months or years later, that person gives something even bigger to you? Does anyone have that experience? And that's what generosity is, folks. When you give, you always get more back. And you don't give to get, but you will get, because that's what generosity always does. You're always going to get more than you give. Okay, even though in the moment it seems like you're losing out. My middle son is probably one of the most generous people I know. When he was a kid, he would get money from the tooth fairy, right? I think $1 for a tooth. And as soon as he got the $1, he'd run to mom, ask for 4 quarters, keep 1 quarter for himself, and give the other 3 to his brothers. Just warms your heart, right? Generous kid. But that generous kid got it all back to him because since he was so generous, he was everyone's favorite to give gifts to at Christmas and birthday. So he always got the most gifts. And he always got the best gifts. But it wasn't because he planned it that way. It's just that generosity always comes back to you. But do you guys see how generosity then can help you get rid of greed? Greed is mine, mine, mine. Like golem, my precious, my precious. Greed hangs on. But generosity lets go. Okay. 6th poison. The 6th deadly sin. Gluttony. Gluttony. So gluttony is willful excess in food, drink, or pleasure. It doesn't mean that if you eat a meal and you're still a little hungry at the end, so you have dessert, but maybe that piece of pie or cake was a little bigger than you needed. No, that's not gluttony. It happens to everybody. Gluttony is where you do it on purpose, right? You've already had 2 slices of pie. You know you should have another, but you have another big one, and maybe another one after that. Okay. Gluttony is willful excess in food and drink, right? Maybe you've had 3 beers, you know you should stop, especially if you're going to drive later. You have 4 or 5 more. That's the point here, right? It's not accidental excess, which everyone can do. It's excess on purpose. And we all know that that can happen to any of us, right? Excess on purpose. Now, notice that it's not only food or drink. That's usually what you think of when you hear gluttony. But can really be any pleasure. Now, this isn't specifically sexual pleasure, because that's going to be poison number 7. That's lust. But other kinds of pleasure could be, I don't know, maybe you like to take a hot shower. Great, everyone does. Well, it's one thing to take, 10-minute shower that gets you nice and clean. It's another thing to take a 30-minute hot shower. Nobody needs to take a 30-minute hot shower, okay? Now, maybe you had a really long week. I'm not trying to make any people feel guilty. That's my maybe in a certain case, 30-minute hot shower is fine. The point is we all know our limits. We all know when enough is enough. And when we go beyond that on purpose, that's what gluttony is, okay? All right. Antidote. Temperance. Temperance. Temperance is also known as moderation. It's where you don't skip stuff completely, but you just have a decent amount. So, for example, let's say someone offers you a piece of cake. Okay, take the cake. Don't just say, "Oh no, I'm fighting against gluttony." No, take the cake. But instead of serving yourself the huge slice, how about a smaller slice? Okay? Moderation is where you do something but not to the extreme. You do something to a reasonable extent. And this is a virtue we can all work on in different ways, right? There's different ways that we can do it. Maybe you are used to taking, I don't know, or having dessert every single dinner. Fine, that's not a sin. But maybe to kind of work on yourself and develop your virtue of temperance, you could say, all right, I think twice a week I'm not going to have dessert. Whatever that looks like for you, we all have different ways that we can cut back here and there without cutting things out completely. Okay, and that's actually more realistic, because someone says, oh, I'm going to fight gluttony. I'm never going to have dessert ever in my life again. Never ice cream, never cake. That all sounds good. But first of all, it's not realistic. And second, it's not even common sense. We're supposed to be normal people, but being normal people demands some temperance. And that's going to help us to fight against the sin of gluttony. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. All right, last one. Now, there's a reason why why lust is last and pride is first. And here's the reason. It's actually last on most lists that you'll find of the seven deadly sins. This is not to say that, oh, lust is actually okay. No, it's not the point. What it is to say is that lust is usually directed at people and has something to do with relationships. Whereas pride is the total shutting out of God, which means it's the worst thing you can do. And everything kind of goes down. Also, lust is usually a sin of weakness, which means people can fall into it because they're weak, even though they're good people. Whereas pride is not a sin of weakness. Pride is a sin of malice, when you want to be bad, or you just want to be on your own and say, forget you, God. Lust isn't about that. And you'll meet plenty of people who struggle with lust. They're not bad people, but because we're all weak, it's something that all of us can fall into. Okay, so what is lust? Sexual desire or enjoyment that is unrestrained, misdirected, or both. Okay, now I want to be clear on what we mean here. To say that lust just means, oh, anything sexual, no, that's not it at all. That's not the point, because sex is such a good thing. But notice we're going to go through each one. Unrestrained. Unrestrained is when there's simply no control whatsoever. That can happen even to married couples, right? It can happen to anyone. No control whatsoever. I don't know. Let's say, what could that look like with a married couple? They could do it while the kids are in the same room and not have any, right? It's unrestrained. It's not appropriate. Okay, so that's what unrestrained means. Misdirected is where instead of it being directed to your spouse or future spouse, it's directed to, I don't know, self, masturbation. Could be directed towards the picture or the image on the internet, pornography. It could be directed towards someone else's wife. Okay, that's what we mean by misdirected. And it can also be both. It can be unrestrained and misdirected, or it could be either one. The point is that's what we mean by lust. Normal sexual relations between husband and wife does not figure into lust at all. In fact, it's the opposite. It's a virtue. It's a good thing and builds healthy marriages. But this is something we can all fall into, whether we're happily married or not. Every single one of us has the devil inside, and we're all capable of falling. So part of humility is recognizing that you can fall. Part of pride is thinking that you can never fall. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, all of us can fall into this. We're all bombarded with it. And I think we're probably bombarded with it more now than we ever have been as a human race. Because now there's internet, there's TV mature, right? There's all kinds of temptation. The way people dress sometimes is just totally inappropriate. So the point is that this is maybe even more of a danger now than it used to be. But it's always been around. Okay, what's the antidote? Chastity. Now, does chastity mean just never have sex the rest of your life? Well, of course not. That's not what chastity is. Chastity means respecting sexuality for what it's meant to be, which is in the context of marriage, or someone engaged to be marriage. Obviously, you're not having sexual relations, but the relationship is headed that way. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a respect for sexuality and not a complete avoidance of it. Now, how do we practice it? That's the nitty-gritty. That's the nitty-gritty of how do we practice chastity, which is going to help us to fight against lust. Well, there's one really big way. It's the eyes. It's the eyes. And there are different things you can do, right? You can put an internet filter. That's good because sometimes you're just browsing and something will come up. You know you shouldn't look, but we're weak and you can. An internet filter can help. Okay. Well, what if you're at the mall, or what if you're at the beach? You're at the beach, maybe you're with your wife, your girlfriend, or you're just alone. Okay, you don't have to look at every bikini that comes around or every hot guy that you see. If you're a girl, whatever. Okay, you can control your eyes. When you control your eyes, you're actually telling Jesus, I love you, Jesus. Because I love you, I'm going to work on my virtue of chastity. We also have a choice about what we watch. Okay, I think I shared this with you guys in another class. My wife and I came to a point where we just decided we're never going to watch TV mature again. And we've been faithful to that. Now, if it's TV mature just for violence and language, okay, that's different. But usually TV matures for sex as well. And it's just that stuff we don't need to see, even though we're married, but we don't need to see that stuff. See, so choosing what you look at, choosing what you watch, that's how we practice chastity. And of course, being appropriate in our relationships. Maybe you work with an attractive person. It's fine. Maybe you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or you're engaged, married, whatever. But you work with an attractive person. Nothing wrong with that. You can even have a friendship. And having a friendship is different from, hey, let's go get coffee. And then 2 days later, hey, let's do this. We can all, because we're all humans, we can all fall into those things if we're not careful. What's chastity then? Chastity is being careful. Because sex is like fire that if you play with, you'll get burned. Respect it. It's beautiful. God made it. But don't play with it. In other words, don't use it in a way that's not supposed to be used. Okay? All right. Well, those are the 7 poisons, the 7 deadly sins. The 7 ways we can fight against them. I did give you the sheets so you can kind of just review later. But I wanted to finish with something to kind of wrap it up. And I don't know, was anyone at Mass today or read the readings from Mass today? This was there. It was from the Gospel, the story of the rich young man. And this comes up in that story, so I'm going to read to you, and then you'll see what it has to do with this. So Mark 10 is the story of the rich young man. All right, so the point of the story, you guys probably know it, is the rich young man comes up to Jesus and says, Master, what do I need to achieve eternal life? And Jesus says, well, follow the commandments, honor your father and mother, do not kill, do not steal, etc. The young man says, I've done all these, what more do I need to do? And Jesus says, go sell all you have. Now, that's just because that particular man was actually called to that, and he wasn't willing to go the extra mile. So then the apostles, who are used to thinking of the rich people as the blessed ones, they asked Jesus this question. They asked him, because they were amazed, and they said, so the apostles were greatly astounded and said to one another, then who can be saved? And here's what Jesus told them. Jesus looked at them and said, for mortals it is impossible, but not for God. For God all things are possible. So my point is, folks, that we all have all these 7. And maybe as I've talked about these things tonight, maybe if you're honest, you're like, I do that, and I do that, and I do that. So what? God's mercy is what saves us. It's not, oh, God only saves you if you're holy. God only saves you if you're perfect. No. God saves you if you're trying. You're aware of your faults. You're trying to do the opposite virtues. Trying your best to love God. You fall, you go to confession, try again. See, that is the person that gets saved. Because it's God's mercy that saves us and not our own achievements, not our own perfections or virtues. And that also is humility. Do you guys remember why Jesus didn't like the Pharisees? Why did Jesus criticize the Pharisees so many times? You guys don't remember? Because they were all about how perfect they were, and they followed every law perfectly so that they could feel good about themselves. And they were all about other people giving them places of honor and stuff. Right? That rings a bell, right? You've heard Jesus criticize that before. It's because they were about pride and look at how good I am, instead of being about mercy and relying on God's mercy to save us. Mercy isn't something we get because we deserve it. It's something we get because we need it. And God looks at what we need. He doesn't look at what we deserve. You guys see how that's very different? All right, now I went through those kind of fast. We're actually really good on time. I don't mind ending early, but I want to open it up in case you guys have specific questions or maybe things that you think are good to share, experiences from your own life, lessons you've learned, things you can recommend. Does anyone have questions, comments? I can let you think about it a minute. No? Does that, yeah, go ahead.
Thinking about greed when you're talking about greed.
Yeah, let's go back to it.
And
Go back to greed.
The example of greed is wanting more and more to our worldly success. When is enough enough? I mean,
Yeah.
because if you've got a job or you're trying to get a promotion or you're trying, well, whatever that looks like, in someone's life.
Yeah.
How do you decide when enough is enough?
That's a good question. And I think that is something that each person has to discern.
Right.
Because everyone's got their own conscience. And it's kind of like the food example, right? We know our limits. For some people, 3 slices of cake is not too much, and for other people, 2 is too much. So I think to answer your question, it comes down to each person's situation. I think if each person looks at what they've got and can honestly say, well, I really do think God's calling me to get a little more, for my family, for whatever reason, fine. But if those material needs are already in place and, normal promotion and advancement will come anyway, well, then the person might need to decide that I need to, hold back a little bit or not worry about it so much. So, yeah.
Is it also that success is okay as long as your order
Yeah.
is okay?
It's like, you probably know this, right? You probably met someone who was really rich, but who was super down to earth. That often happens with people who've, they started with nothing, they worked hard, they appreciate things. We've all met people who are rich and just, it hasn't gone to their head. But you can also meet people who aren't that rich, but they're all about, let's get more, let's get more, let's get more. So do you see how it's going to depend on the person? And it depends on the intention as well. Is it getting more just because of greed, or is it getting more because, provide for the family?
God doesn't frown on success.
God doesn't frown on success. That's not the point. God frowns on the insatiable desire for success. If you do it
in front of him. I mean, not
Yeah.
in front of him. Like
make it more important than
make it
him.
more important than him is what I'm saying.
Exactly. If you do,
You neglect God, or you
or relationships.
Relationships.
Put
all the things that God values more.
Yeah. You put those,
your wife, your children,
all those things.
Him primarily.
Yeah.
And the order.
Yeah. It's the order. There's nothing wrong with success in itself, or earning a good salary or whatever, but it's the intention. If that's all you're about, I just want to keep making more, that's wrong. But if you're about, I'm going to work hard because I want to be diligent, I want to serve and glorify God, provide for my family, dedicate a reasonable amount of time to it,
Sure.
Not 100-hour week,
Sure.
but a reasonable amount of time, there's nothing wrong with that. See, because it's all about intention and what you're valuing more. Hi. How is that accolade?
So it's good, just great, just go over the whole criminal mass and stuff that's going on. So.
Okay, well, we're kind of just in question and answer right now.
Okay, cool.
We did we did all the 7 deadly sins and the contrary virtues to work on to counteract each one. And
You guys got a copy of all the 7 deadly sins, right?
Yep.
Okay.
got that. And then I think everyone put their name on the sign-in list, right? Did you put yours? Okay. Good. Are there other questions, comments, maybe experiences from? Yes. I'm sorry. What is your name?
Alyssa.
Alyssa.
Just coming back, I really like how you're explaining, like, envy and jealousy, because, you said, we're all human and stuff, and, how you mentioned, like, just doing gratitude. I feel like sometimes, like, I'll catch myself, just being envious and jealous, because I always feel like there's more out there. Like, there's always going to be more, there's always going to be better, and sometimes, like, I'll catch myself, like, my husband and I will have conversations, and it's like, every time where we try to do something, it's like, we're stuck. Like, we get stuck and like trying to just do better for us, and there's always just like something just like holding us back from it.
Yeah.
But lately we've been doing like more gratitude of it. Just like everyday affirmations, we go on high sometimes on easy, but we'll do like gratitude and stuff, and I feel like that has helped us more how to focus on like the bad or the negative, like just to kind of help us like push forward. And
That's great.
it's just like social media, or how you're saying, like there's so many things out there and you see it, and
Yeah.
someone always doing better than you, but I really like how you put the whole like gratitude part of it.
Be thankful for what you have, right? Yeah.
Can I say something about that? That's a very good point, because I had a conversation with my brother about this last summer. And about people who want to, what's the next thing? What's next? What's next? They always say, stop and smell the roses.
Mhm.
Okay? Live that experience. Stop, slow down, take it in. Because there's a story that could come out of that could possibly change someone's life. There's a story that could help somebody through something. And like I've said before, you've already heard it, it's no accident that you're going to be there, whoever that is. God allows you to be there so that you can see how it's going to impact your life, and how it impacts you guys' life, other people's life, and how you could be a source to evangelize and tell people about who Jesus is, that He put you in that particular moment. Okay? And also too, how does my brother say it? He says, like I said, there is no accident. There's never an accident. It's always something to live, something that you can do, because God, like I said before, God is in control. Okay? He's giving us these graces, giving us these blessings, so that we can understand